I was standing in the hallway of my own home, eavesdropping on a conversation I was never meant to hear. The walls were thin, but the words were thick with betrayal. "She'll never see it coming. I've already filed everything under my name," he said, his voice laced with arrogance. I felt my breath catch in my throat. That voice, it wasn't just anyone. It was Daniel, my husband's brother. Just an hour before, I had handed over the prototype of my latest business pitch to my husband for safekeeping. I'd worked on it for nearly 2 years, meticulously sketching, researching, testing, dreaming. The dream was finally turning into something tangible. It wasn't just a product. It was my identity, my independence, my future. And now it was being stolen. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to disappear into the shadows of the corridor. I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be listening. But how could I not? I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, fast, loud, and chaotic. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the realization that someone so close, someone I trusted in a familial way, was capable of this. Daniel always had a charm about him. That boy-next-door grin, the witty comebacks, the confidence that made people stop and listen. But beneath that polished exterior, there was something else, an invisible hunger, a desire to win at any cost. I saw glimpses of it before, but I brushed them off. I thought I was overthinking. But now I knew. I quietly backed away, slipping into the guest room, shutting the door as softly as I could manage. My fingers trembled as I reached for my phone. I wanted to call my husband. I wanted to scream. But I couldn't. Not yet. My mind raced, replaying the last few months. How Daniel always seemed a little too interested in my business plans. How he casually asked to look over my marketing draft. How he suggested a friendly pitch session with one of his startup buddies. I thought it was all part of the support system. Family helping family. But it was never about helping. It was about stealing. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to steady my breathing. Everything felt surreal, like a slow-burning nightmare. And the worst part? No one would believe me if I said it. Daniel had that effect on people. He knew how to play the game, how to smile just enough to get away with anything. I glanced at the notebook on the side table. My original sketches. My notes. Every idea carefully written by hand, long before I turned anything digital. I reached for it with a trembling hand, running my fingers over the pages like they were precious relics. My hand stopped on the page that read, "Idea name, urban, organic, herbal luxury tea line for working women." He was planning to sell it, claim it, build it without me. I clenched my jaw. I wasn't just hurt. I was furious. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to cry. Not yet. I wasn't going to confront him in anger. I wasn't going to beg anyone to believe me. I was going to do something else. Something smarter. I would wait. I would watch. And when the time came, I would make sure Daniel regretted ever underestimating me. I didn't know exactly how I'd do it, not yet. But I knew where to start. I had to gather proof. I had to become someone he wouldn't suspect. I had to play the same game, but better. I took a deep breath and stood up. This was no longer about just saving my business. This was about something deeper, about reclaiming my power from someone who thought he could take it without consequence. From that moment on, I made a vow. He could try to steal my idea. But I would steal back something far more important, his peace, his pride, his illusion of being untouchable. It's strange how betrayal doesn't scream, it whispers. It doesn't announce itself with chaos. It creeps in silently, like a shadow crawling into corners you thought were safe. Over the next few days, I played my role. The supportive sister-in-law, the innocent wife, the unsuspecting dreamer who hadn't the faintest clue about what Daniel was planning behind closed doors. But I was watching everything. At dinner, I smiled when he made a joke. I nodded when he asked how the tea concept was going. And when he offered to connect me with someone in marketing, I even thanked him. Inside, though, every cell in my body burned with tension. I was analyzing every word he spoke, every look he gave my husband. And I noticed something I hadn't seen before, or maybe I had, but I didn't want to admit it. He wasn't just stealing my idea. He was trying to edge me out completely. 3 days later, I accidentally walked past the den while Daniel was on a Zoom call. I heard the word urban roll off his tongue like he owned it. Yeah, the packaging will be minimalist, organic feel, very woman-centric. We're launching the first line by end of next quarter. I stopped. My chest tightened.
We.
Who was we? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed beside my husband, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he knew, if he was part of it.
No, he couldn't be.
Not Michael. But then again, hadn't he been unusually quiet about the business lately? Hadn't he brushed off my updates, changed the subject, or said things like, don't stress over it too much? I hated the feeling, the not knowing, the creeping sense that I was completely alone in this. So, I began keeping notes. Every time Daniel slipped up, I wrote it down. Every name he mentioned. Every new contact he claimed to be working with. Every odd exchange I overheard between him and Michael. I created a hidden folder on my laptop and stored screenshots of emails. Backed up all my original files to an encrypted drive. I even emailed them to myself using a private address only I knew about. I wasn't just preparing a case. I was building a war chest. The tension only grew from there. Daniel started getting more confident, bolder. He'd leave the door to his office slightly ajar, letting me overhear him talk about investor meetings and product demos. He even ordered tea samples to the house. One day, I found a package on the front porch labeled Urban HQ. My hands shook as I picked it up. He wasn't trying to hide it anymore.
He was taunting me.
But here's the part that really broke me. Michael started acting distant. He came home late. He wasn't as affectionate. He barely asked about the business. He once celebrated with me over wine and late-night brainstorming. And whenever Daniel was around, Michael's mood shifted, guarded, tense, like something was weighing on him that he couldn't say. One evening, I confronted him lightly. Hey, I said, trying to sound casual, have you and Daniel been working on anything lately? He seems really busy these days. Michael looked up from his phone. Just helping him with some design ideas. He's got a startup pitch coming up. My heart thudded in my ears. Startup pitch? For what? He shrugged. Just some product idea. I didn't get the full details. You know Daniel, he's always chasing something. I stared at him. His tone was neutral, almost dismissive. But something about the way he avoided eye contact, it screamed that he was hiding more than he was saying. That night, I cried in the bathroom. Silent tears. Fists clenched over the sink. I wasn't just being betrayed by Daniel. I was starting to believe my husband might be complicit too. I wiped my tears and looked at myself in the mirror. No more denial. No more excuses. I couldn't afford to fall apart. If they thought I would quietly fade into the background, they were dead wrong. I had one thing on my side that they'd overlooked. I was always 10 steps ahead when it came to this business. And now I had one more weapon: motive. I began setting digital traps. I planted a slightly modified version of my pitch deck in our shared folder, one with fake supplier contacts and incorrect formulation details. Days later, I found evidence that Daniel had downloaded it. He was using my decoy plan.
Perfect.
I waited. Soon after, I received an anonymous email invite to an investor webinar. The branding was slick. The agenda mentioned a revolutionary tea brand created by visionary entrepreneurs. And the logo? A poorly redesigned version of my urban concept. I stared at the screen, heat rising up my spine. It was official. He was stealing it, publicly. And yet, I didn't feel powerless. I felt ready. Because what Daniel didn't know is this. I had already registered the original business under my name 2 weeks ago, quietly and legally. I had ownership of the trademark, the design copyrights, the brand colors, even the domain. Every single thing he was building now. It was sitting on my intellectual property. And when he launched, he'd be walking into a legal minefield. But I didn't want to just stop him. I wanted him to feel it. I wanted him to realize he'd been played. The day came like a whisper, not a bang. And that's how I knew it would hit harder. Daniel had planned a small investor showcase at a co-working hub downtown. My husband Michael said he had a meeting and left early, which didn't sit right with me. Still, I let him go. Let the pieces move where they needed to. Because I was moving too. I got dressed with purpose. Black power blazer, sleek hair, minimalist makeup. The kind of look that says, I know what I'm doing, and I dare you to underestimate me. I wasn't just showing up. I was declaring war, silently. I arrived at the venue right as the showcase began. People were gathering around the display booths. There it was, Daniel's setup. Glossy banners. Urban branding splashed across everything like confetti. But it wasn't mine. It was my blueprint, yes. But it was a messy, broken, soulless version of it. They'd taken the seed I planted and tried to clone it. But they couldn't grow it because they didn't know the soil. Daniel stood there, charming as ever, in his tailored blazer, talking about his journey into sustainable wellness. I watched from the crowd as he pitched to investors, quoting facts I'd written, storytelling lines I'd spent nights perfecting. I waited, and then I stepped forward. I walked up just as one of the investors, a tall woman in a plum pantsuit, asked him about the inspiration behind the brand. Daniel started to spin his tale. Well, it came from observing the rising need for natural remedies. My team and I began prototyping blends. Interesting, I said, interrupting with a calm smile. Because I distinctly remember building those blends in my kitchen over a year ago. His face paled. The investor turned. I'm sorry, who are you? I'm the founder of Urban. The legal one, I replied, calmly producing a leather folder. All documentation, trademarks, and intellectual property ownership are under my name, including the original blend formulas and branding assets. The crowd began to murmur. Daniel laughed nervously. This is my sister-in-law. She's confused. I took a step closer. No, Daniel. I'm not confused. I'm the creator of the concept you copied. And I can prove it. I handed the folder to the investor, who began flipping through the documents. Her brows furrowed in recognition, emails, timestamps, receipts, registrations. Everything airtight. Daniel reached out to snatch the folder. This is ridiculous. This is just desperate. I offered.
Yes.
It is. He turned to me, voice low. What are you doing? I leaned in. Ending this. Publicly. Michael appeared in the crowd. His face froze as he saw me standing there, opposite Daniel, center stage. He stepped forward. Babe, let's talk in private. No, I said, loud enough for the crowd. You knew, didn't you? You knew what he was doing. Michael's lips parted. No words came out. Did you help him? I asked again, not shouting, just piercing. The kind of question that hangs in the air and shatters illusions. I thought it was a collaboration. You weren't clear. No. I cut in.
Don't spin this.
You weren't oblivious. You were silent. That's complicity. The investor looked at Daniel, her voice crisp now. You failed to disclose prior ownership claims. This is a serious violation. Daniel tried to regroup. Look, we can figure this out. Maybe we can offer her a royalty. I laughed then. A real, full-bodied laugh. You want to offer me something that already belongs to me? The silence was ice cold. I'm not here for negotiations, I said. I'm here to stop a theft. And I've already filed a cease and desist with your hosting platform. The site goes down tonight. The payment processor's already been flagged for IP infringement. And tomorrow, my legal team will begin formal proceedings. Daniel opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Just air. I turned to leave, but not before I looked at Michael. You had a chance to stand beside me, I said. But instead, you stood behind him. His eyes dropped.
Shame.
Regret. Or maybe just the realization that the woman he underestimated had just burned the entire scheme to the ground. I was at home, curled on the couch, laptop open, scrolling through emails from the investors who'd attended the event. Most of them were sympathetic, some even angry on my behalf. One wrote, "You handled that with dignity and force. You've got something special. Let me know how I can help." But there was one email I didn't expect. From Daniel. Subject line. You made your point. I hovered over it, debating whether to open it. But my curiosity won. You embarrassed me. In front of investors, colleagues, and my own family. You could have handled this privately, but you chose spectacle.
Fine.
You won. But just so you know, I'm not going to fade quietly. You made an enemy, not just a statement. I stared at the screen. No remorse. No apology. Just ego and threat disguised as a wounded man's pride. I took a breath and deleted the email. Then came the knock on the door. I knew that knock. Controlled. Hesitant. It was Michael. I didn't answer right away. I let him knock again, then call my name. I opened the door a crack. What?
He looked exhausted.
Can we talk? Please. I stepped aside, but said nothing. He sat on the couch, not on his usual spot, just at the edge, like a visitor. I stayed standing, arms crossed. I know you're angry, he started. No, I said. I'm past angry. I didn't know he'd take it that far, he continued. I thought he was just using the idea as a springboard. You never told me the paperwork was official. You never asked, I snapped. You never cared to. You heard me talk about it, saw the drafts, watched me pour myself into it, and when it was time to stand up for me, you vanished. I was trying to keep the peace, he said weakly. There is no peace in betrayal, Michael. There's just silence. And silence isn't neutral, it's alignment. He leaned forward. What do you want me to do? I wanted you to choose me, I said. Not just in love. In loyalty. In respect. In truth. His eyes watered. You're right. I failed you. For a moment, I said nothing. The silence filled the room like smoke. Thick, choking. I can make it right, he said. I can testify. I'll go public and support your claims. I studied him. Is that because you believe in me? Or because you're scared of what I'll do next? He flinched at that. Both. And finally, honesty. I'm not here to destroy you, Michael. But I'm not going to protect you either. Not from the truth. You stood by while your brother stole from me. That has consequences. He nodded slowly. I understand. Then came the last blow. There's one more thing, I said, grabbing my phone and pulling up a voice memo. Recognize this? I hit play. Daniel's voice, loud and smug. She thinks she's got it locked up. But I've already replicated every part of her model. She won't know what hit her. And with Mike on board, I'm basically bulletproof. Michael's face turned ashen. Where did you get that? You left your iPad at home last week. It auto-recorded a FaceTime call between you and Daniel. You didn't even realize it. He looked like the floor had dropped out from under him. I'm not just angry, I continued. I'm prepared. So what happens now, he asked. That's up to you, I said. You can cooperate. Or I can add your name to the legal filing. Aiding and abetting intellectual property theft isn't a small thing. He buried his face in his hands. God, what have I done? The answer? You chose the wrong side. Within days, Daniel was slapped with a cease and desist letter. My lawyer had compiled enough evidence, timestamps, files, conversations, the audio recording from Michael's iPad, to prove beyond doubt that the idea was mine, conceived and documented long before Daniel ever got near it. He tried to deny everything at first, but the more he fought, the more he revealed. Emails, meetings, investor calls where he couldn't explain the mechanics of my concept. He fumbled through technical jargon, misrepresented projections, and contradicted earlier statements. The illusion began to crack. One by one, the investors pulled out. Those who had been ready to sign with him either ghosted or sent messages like, "We value innovation with integrity. Best of luck." Daniel's arrogance had backed him into a corner, and now the walls were closing in. And Michael? He did what he said he would. He issued a public statement, confirming the origin of the idea and acknowledging his passive role in Daniel's deceit. It didn't undo the damage, but it put him on the right side of the story.
Barely.
We separated shortly after. Not out of hate, but because trust, once shattered, doesn't always rebuild. Love may have brought us together, but silence had driven a wedge too deep. I didn't cry when he left. I think a part of me had already grieved the relationship the night he said nothing. With Daniel's project dead in the water, I finally launched my business. My original vision, in its purest form, clean, authentic, and mine. No shadows. No sabotage. Just creation. The first month we broke even. The second, we turned a profit. By the third, we were featured in a local tech publication with a headline, "Stolen idea?" Not quite. She had it all along. It was validating, but not nearly as satisfying as what came next. One evening, as I locked up the office, my phone buzzed. A blocked number. I ignored it. It rang again. Then a voicemail. Curious, I played it. Daniel's voice.
Shaky.
Broken. I lost everything. The investors. The reputation. Even Michael won't speak to me now. I was wrong.
About you. About the whole damn thing.
I thought I could outshine you. But the truth is, I was standing in your shadow the entire time. And I hated it. I hated how bright you were. I stood there, stunned. Not because he apologized, but because in that voicemail for the first time he told the truth. Not to save face, but because he had nothing left to lose. I saved the voicemail, but I never replied. Some people think revenge means destroying someone else. But for me, it was simpler, building what was mine and making sure they could never steal it again. I thought that would be the end of it, until I got the letter. Not an email, a handwritten letter. No return address. Inside, a note. You didn't just win. You taught us what happens when a woman stops asking for permission.
Don't stop building.
You were never small. We were just threatened. No name. No signature. Just those words, penned in elegant ink on cream paper.
I stared at it for a long time.
Then folded it neatly and tucked it into my notebook, right next to my first draft of the business plan, wrinkled, coffee-stained, and full of red ink. The past didn't define me anymore, but it did remind me of who I was,
Of what I almost lost.
of how far I was willing to go, not to destroy someone else, but to reclaim myself. And still, sometimes in the quiet of the night, I replay Daniel's voicemail, not out of spite, but because it reminds me that my voice, silenced once, now echoes louder than ever. And that's power.